Mechanics of Vibration, Volume 2, Amplification, by Jaylen. Key definitions. Amplification, the process of increasing the intensity, strength, or size of something. Developing, growing and becoming more mature. De-amplify, to reduce the intensity, strength, or level of amplification of something. Life follows the act of amplification in more than a few ways. Think of a flower, or a human, or even the weather. These are all processes that follow natural amplification and de-amplification seen in the world around us. Now, amplification doesn't just happen in the physical aspect of life, but it could also take place in many other ways too. So let's take a second to see how amplification happens. So we all know a healthy flower can't stay healthy without its nutrients and requirements to stay healthy. Without the correct requirements, the properties of the flower would change and cause the flower to change its identity. So we all know the difference between a well-kept garden and a neglected one. The flowers in a cherished garden would thrive and flourish, while the flowers in a neglected garden will wilt and perish. But let's say we started neglecting the cherished garden. What will happen to the flowers? Now, the two versions of the flower are both going through the same process. Both versions are developing and amplifying the being based on its identity. Once the cherished flower identifies as a neglected flower, the version of the flower that is neglected will begin to amplify and become a more developed version of a neglected flower. But let's talk about how the cherished flower becomes and identifies as the neglected flower in the first place. The process of de-amplification. De-amplification is the process of reducing strength or intensity to a force. So really, it is just the opposite of amplification. So in order for something to become or identify as something else, it must stop being that initial something. The flower cannot be cared for and neglected at the same time. It wouldn't make any sense. It's either one or the other. The illustration below shows the amplification and de-amplification process. As something amplifies, it grows, and as something de-amplifies, it lessens. The process of de-amplification in this scenario would be the cherished flower de-amplifying until it is no longer a cherished flower, until it transitions into a neglected flower. Another example of de-amplification would be identifying as a young boy. The older you get, the more your youthfulness de-amplifies. Your youthfulness would de-amplify until your identity transitions into an old man. Then your oldness would amplify due to age. But like I said, amplification doesn't always reside in the physical aspect of things, but also non-physical, emotional, mental, and other ways. Just like the cherished and neglected flowers, forces of amplification can be positive or negative. Here are some examples. So let's revert back to Volume 1 when we discussed rhythm. Understanding how there can be positive and negative rhythms, it wouldn't be too crazy to add amplification to the mix. As cause is equal to effect, reading a book is equal to gaining the knowledge from the book. So every time you read a book, you gain knowledge, which is overall amplifying the general aspect of knowledge you have in your life. This is an example of positive amplification. The example of a negative amplification follows the same rules. Just as farting equals bad smells, the more you fart would equal the intensity of the bad smells. This formula is great to know in social dynamics. Let's say you had a friend and every time you seen them, you became closer and the bond became stronger. So as cause is equal to effect, the more you meet with the friend, the stronger the bond. The connection amplifies. This is an example of positive amplification. But let's say one day you caught that friend in a bad lie. Let's say you began to distrust them and you label them as an untrustworthy friend. The identity of the character would change from friend to untrustworthy friend. And every time after that you caught them in a lie, your distrust for them will amplify. This is an example of negative amplification. So really, the relationship you have with a character, identity, or being defines the connection that'll be amplified. Bad relationships just get worse, while good relationships just get better. In its simplicity, it's all just positives and negatives being amplified. And that concludes this volume. I hope this helped you further understand the life, structure, and sequence that surrounds us in this experience. Make sure to tune in for the next volume of Mechanics of Vibration. Until next time, peace.